And today I have the distinct pleasure of introducing Karsh Kale. Welcome, Karsh, to Google.
Thank you guys for having me.
So Karsh, I started playing tabla probably when I was around 10 years old. And I remember one of our family friends, his name is Pradeep Bende, he came to our hometown in Greenville, North Carolina, and then he sat down with us, and one time at dinner, he saw some tabla, which were there in the living room, and then he pulled them out, and he asked my dad, "Can you play tabla, or can I play tabla?" And I said, "No, I'm only 10 years old." So then he started playing, and then lo and behold, he became my guru, which started off after like a career with around 2 years of me playing. But then I gave it up, and then I didn't even think about how much love and how much like fascination I have with tabla. How did you actually start learning to play tabla, and how did that life?
Well, I mean, tabla was kind of always in my house. My father's very much into Indian classical music and film music and old Marathi folk music and all that kind of stuff. So that since I was born, this music was playing in my house. And he actually had tablas in the house since I was about 3 or 4 years old. So I always kind of went over, and I had a kind of natural inclination to the instrument. But I rebelled against it. It was...
How so?
Well, because growing up in Long Island in the early 80s, I was probably the only Indian kid in a school of about 2,000. Mostly Jewish kids. And it was just not something that I could use as, as a part of my identity. So I was a drummer. I was playing drum kit. I was into heavy metal and hard rock and all that kind of stuff.
What kind of music were you listening to back then?
Oh, about Rush, Led Zeppelin. I mean, those were my doorways into music. It was definitely Rush and Led Zeppelin.
Yeah.
And then, all kinds of different stuff, all kinds of progressive rock. And it wasn't until my dad kind of realized that, I was listening to sophisticated music. So he took me to see Zakir Bhai. He took me to see Zakir Hussain perform at Columbia University. And that was the first time I realized that, you can take this art form, and because I witnessed it. I witnessed this guy come to New York and take this classical art form and turn it into a rock concert. And everybody left there, this guy wasn't just a classical musician, he was a rock star.
Is that when you knew that you could actually make a career out of it? Was that?
I was too young to think about it as a career. I just knew that this was something that all of a sudden was something I wanted to make a part of my identity as a human being. I didn't really understand how that was going to play out later on in my career, but that was where I really embraced tabla and embraced the science of tabla and embraced what it had to offer to, not just as a tabla player or as a classical musician, but to all the different forms of music that I was involved in, because it was informing everything. So that was my doorway into playing tabla, and then of course from there it evolved into becoming a serious student.
So I don't know how many of you in the audience have followed Karsh, but I've been following him since he first debuted in around like 2001-ish with the Realize album. I remember distinctly I was in my freshman year of college with my friend Rocky and Mithil, and we were in his car, and he puts on this track, and then out of nowhere, I fell in love with tabla all over again. And that for me was when I knew that this is a completely different sound. Like you were doing things in music that no one else had ever done before. This was more than just special. It was an awakening into a new movement. Tell me a little bit about the motivation for this album and kind of like where your inspiration came from for it.
Well, the first album is called Realize for a reason. Realize was actually a line in a song that I was working on with a friend, which wound up on the album called Fabric, a few years before the album came out. And the line in the song is 1,001 designs intertwine. Which one is mine? And then Realize. So Realize was kind of the culmination of everything that I had done as a musician, as an artist, as an explorer of music, and finally kind of finding that laser-like hole that I could send all of that information through. So and it really had to do with identity. It had to do with the fact that back then, and this was at a time where we didn't have social media, we didn't have access to anything, so everything that we were hearing about was all kind of legend. That in London, this stuff is happening. In San Francisco, this kind of thing is happening. So that became a huge impetus to kind of get involved in this movement that was about defining a new generation's identity, where we don't come from India in that way. Bollywood didn't necessarily define who we are, neither did, the kind of Desi Bhangra parties that were happening at the time.
Sure.
So we needed to create something else. We needed to create a safe space for people to be able to come and express who it is, exactly who they are. And that's what this music was about. And it wasn't just about my music. At that same time, there was this whole movement going on in London with Talvin Singh and Nitin Sawhney and the Anoka movement and Nasha and Badmarsh and Shri, and then there was a whole movement happening here in San Francisco,
Yeah.
and there was stuff happening in New Delhi and in Tokyo, and it all started happening at the same time. So we all found out that we all thought for a moment that we were the only ones in the world doing what we were doing, and then we realized that this was actually something that was happening, and we were just part of a time period, where we needed to define something. And I think what you felt was probably similar to what I felt when I saw Zakir Bhai perform, which was just that, this is me. This is not, and that's what I've learned, I think, as an artist ever since making that first album, is that people, when you make music, you can be as specific as you want to be about your own story. But it really only takes shape when somebody else's mirror is in front of them and it reflects off of their own story. When people feel like this is who I am.
Right. So you perform regularly with artists of all different backgrounds, right? Specializing in percussion, strings, choral, different disciplines. Last night you played at the SF Jazz Center. Amazing performance.
Thank
I was
you.
there. What kinds of emotion do you draw from your audience when you're playing?
I'm less drawing from the audience and more trying to paint pictures that I think that the audience will resonate with. And it's always different. Before coming to SF Jazz, I did 12 dates in India where I was doing a DJ tour.
And we're really happy that you came all the way to Google as part of that.
Yeah, part of me is still in India right now, so forgive this slight jet lag. But sorry, I lost my spot. You were. What was the last part of the last question?
Oh yeah, I was just saying, like, how do you actually just draw from energy from the audience,
right.
and then how people are relating to you?
Yeah, once again, back to what I was saying before. I think it's really about, over the years. When I made the first album, I was kind of shooting in the dark. I had no idea how people were going to react, and it was overwhelming the reaction. But what stayed after the kind of the initial wave was that people would, and to this day, people from all over the world, they write to me about the fact that the music played a particular role sometimes at a very difficult time in their lives, or at a time where they needed to get through something, or it was something that motivated them to be able to reach another level. And I realized that for me, that's the kind of music that I listen to as well.
Yeah.
Music is medicine at its most potent. So what I really try and focus on is the fact that people will dance and people will get into stuff, and people will come up to me and say, "Hey man, that was some sick beats, yo," and all that kind of stuff. But where I feel like I'm successful as an artist is when people come to me and say that the music resonated in a way where it was transformative. It really helped them through something.
I know my wife, Ronnie, she's very much so indebted because she always listened to your music in med school, and it's what pretty much got her through. So
Oh, wow.
I think she can relate to that. If you had the opportunity for 1 year to go back in time and study from one of the greats that you haven't already worked with so far, who would it be?
Peter Gabriel.
Okay.
Yeah. He's just somebody who, not just Peter Gabriel, but I've always been fascinated by artists who were willing to change the terrain, who were willing to kind of, whatever path was in front of them, they decided to go into the forest and completely change the perception of what music was. Someone like Peter Gabriel, he was quite instrumental in introducing the world to what we call world music.
Yeah. Any particular track of his that?
Oh God, albums. Everything from Genesis all the way till when he went solo, into the Passion soundtrack, to all of his solo albums. No, he's just somebody he doesn't think in terms of a conventional format. You know, if you're making a rock song, you want to have drums and bass and guitar, and maybe some keyboards and vocals. But someone like Peter Gabriel will get El Shankar to play electric violin and have Yusu Endure sing this one little line at the end of the song, and and create I mean, the ornaments on the tree that he creates are so unique, and so these are the kind of people that I grew up. I mean, still, these are the people that I look to as inspirations. I mean, Zakir Bhai is another one.
Sure.
Bill Laswell is another one. Sting is another one. I mean, these are people who, when they make music, they think so outside of the box that I think that when they're doing it, they're probably a little scared as well, in terms of, I don't know how this is going to land, but usually they land on their feet.
What's your message to all the young and upcoming artists? I think this is something that you're very passionate about. You try to be extremely proactive. How do you suggest that they actually try to navigate the waters in this very competitive music environment?
I think it's, especially nowadays, because we're so inundated with so much information, and this, you go on YouTube and anything that you're looking for, you'll find 16 hours worth of content. That I think that what oftentimes happens is that we as artists, or not just artists, but especially young artists, tend to want to fit into a mold and fit into a box or fit into a already tried and true path that's been created, whether it be Indian classical music or techno or punk or rock music, whatever it is, so that they can immediately say, this is what I do. And I think that the people that I've seen who have been able to create a lasting career are the people that create something that no one's necessarily heard of before. Something outside of a genre, something outside of a particular box. I think that what I always, when I meet young artists who come to me and say, I've been listening to your music, and if I listen to it and it sounds like me, the first thing that I say is that, so I'm just waiting for it to sound like you now. You need to now find a completely different space, and that is yours. Because the thing is that there's so many different places that an artist can explore that resonate with people. And this isn't foreign art. We're not creating something that people won't understand. But it's about having the courage to be able to step out of that. If you can find it on YouTube, then create something that you can't find yet. That would be my advice to any young artist, is to try, at least that should be your pursuit. Because I think that in the end, where you wind up is at a whole nother space.
That's really good advice. Technology is a huge part of our daily lives today, and you had talked about this a little bit earlier. Especially for artists, this is how you're able to produce. You're able to record different thoughts and emotions, which instantly can be shared with the masses, right? And I think YouTube's a great way of being able to distribute that kind of content. What do you think that Google can do more of to try to help upcoming artists and people who are thinking of trying to share their music and get out there more?
I think, especially for new artists, I think when YouTube first started, it seemed a lot easier to be able to find new, because there wasn't as much content available. It was a lot easier to find new content. I think now, because there's just so much stuff out there, that it's very difficult for a young artist to be able to get heard, to be able to find an audience. And if there was maybe a space where people could go to only for and strictly for brand new presentations of whatever it is, whether it be in-studio presentations or videos that young artists have created, or new tracks, or new artwork, that there's a dedicated space where people can actually go to, that they know that this is brand new, fresh stuff, And then, of course, there's all the other stuff that you can find, the stuff that we've been watching for years and years, and now there's all the archival stuff, that we can get to. But it winds up getting so mixed up that people don't realize that this is brand new, We don't ever hardly look at the date, the upload date.
Sure.
So
I think one of the nice things is, for instance, like if someone wanted to learn even tabla from the very beginning part, of the very early stages now, you can go and you can ask for something like tintal, and then you can go through, and there are 100 different variations of how to do this.
Oh, yeah.
So many different teachers online who can actually do that today.
It's amazing. I mean, I was actually, the other day, my daughter came home, she's 15 now, and she played me some song, and she was like, I want to learn this on the piano. And
Yeah.
I was a little busy at the time. I was like, let's do it on Sunday. By the time Sunday rolled around, she had learned the song already because she went on YouTube and found a tutorial, and she played it for me and taught me the song.
Oh,
So
wow, that's amazing. You've been in the industry now, I'd say, what, at least
about 25 years.
25 years. How's technology changed the music industry?
Oh my God, I've
And
seen
mainly how people create pieces.
I've seen this, especially in the music world. I mean, when I was in college, I was at NYU. I was learning how to record to 2-inch tape, and we were editing, like cutting tape and sticking it up on the wall and figuring out where the snare drum hit so that we can cut it at the right spot so we can bring in another part, or truncate one section, and all of this stuff that I spent years learning. And then the year I graduated, Pro Tools was available in your bedroom. So I don't think I ever used that ever again. So I mean, it's been I think every year or two, technology would just take a leap forward in terms of what you're able to do. I mean, I came from a time where we needed to get together with 16 musicians in a studio. We'd spend 3 days recording, and if you messed up, you have to start again, and editing was a big problem. And then when it came down to mixing a track, there would be 5 of us sitting at a board, and we'd have to, all sit there and kind of, we've got to get the reverb at that, at the bridge, and if you miss it, you have to start over again. Whereas now you can literally, I mean, I have been at the airport, seen something inspiring,
Yeah.
worked on a track on my phone, and landed and have made a video for the track that I made on my phone and have put it up on YouTube within 5 hours. I mean, that's
the power of distribution.
this is the power of what's available now. I mean, I think the only thing that people need to balance is that the human element in that, the experience that one needs to be able to have. It's not enough to just have the technology. It's about marrying the two. And if you're able to actually get access to that kind of knowledge, to be able to be able to create something on the spot,
Yeah.
and be able to share it and get feedback, and in the manner that we're able to do right now, that we also need to be able to have that library of information for people to be able to access, so that they can keep going back and referencing what it is that they're doing, and where they're drawing their inspirations from.
So let's move into kind of like the VR aspect of things. So you and I, we've been working together for about 8 months or so now.
Yeah.
And do you want to share with the audience a little bit about kind of like our VR experiment, kind of what we're working on?
Yeah.
And so for those of you who may not know, this is the Google VR Jump Rig. It's a product that we have here where we're working with GoPro cameras. The VR experience is something that Karsh and I are very passionate about. So I'll give it to you to talk a little bit about kind of the motivation behind what we're doing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for me, even going back to my childhood, what I've always wanted to have is more access to the artists that I was listening to. And back then we had vinyls, we had magazines. Occasionally we'd get to see them on television. And that was about it. So, I mean, I had videotapes that I've played 1,000 times and studied just to be able to get into the intimate details of what these artists were doing, And even now when my daughter comes and asks me, she's a musician as well, about a particular musician, whether it be someone like Prince or David Bowie, and I always say to her that, you need to spend the rest of your life sitting in that genius's chair and figuring out what it is that they did, how it is that they came about, what they created. And when the VR world came about, I was the first thing that came to my mind was that what an incredible way to be able to give people access, to let them step into the studio, to step into the world of an artist, and not just as a performer. I mean, there's obviously the performance aspect where people can actually be there and sit right next to the musician and watch them, and watch their hands and watch their expressions, and kind of try and get that vibe and even interact with them. But there's also the aspect of getting into the studio and being in an environment where you can actually interact, where you can, while in real time, there's a track that's being created, that's being manifested right in front of you, and then people leave the room, and then you're able to actually go in and play with that. Have the kind of unprecedented access that we've never had before with artists. I mean, that was the most inspiring thing about the VR world. That my initial inspiration. And then, I mean, then there's the entire world of how to change the whole relationship between, I mean, like, we're on a stage and you guys are in the audience right now, but that this we can change. We can change this whole interaction. We can change the fact that, like, musicians are put on a pedestal and the audience sits in a place where you can only have a certain level of access. But if you can actually step on stage and go behind the artist, and it just completely changes your perspective. And I think about this when I was 7 years old and I went to see Zakirbai. If I could have went up on stage and sat behind him while he was performing and kind of gotten that kind of access of how much information that would have been for me. It took me years to just study whatever bits and pieces that I could get, and now I realize that, like, for young artists, for young students of music, and just fans of music, to be able to have that kind of access, especially in a day now where digital music has, the one thing that it's done is it's also erased those artifacts that we used to get from artists, the liner notes, the information, the stuff they'd write in albums and stuff, the stuff that those little intimate details that made you feel like you're a little bit closer to the artist have kind of disappeared. So in that place, I feel like we are stepping into a whole nother world where we can give people a really incredible access to, to what it, and not just for music. I mean, this is for anything, all walks.
I'd like to take this moment and open it up for audience questions. If people have any questions, we have mics.
What are the challenges of effectively using spatial audio in VR?
Well, I think that's something that we're still exploring. So I think that I'll have to answer that question in maybe a few months in terms of what the challenges might be.
All right. Thanks.
How do you address, like, creative block? Like, I think every artist experiences that, and, like, what is sort of your, I guess, methodology of getting over that hump?
Well, I mean, for me, if I get a creative block when I'm working on my own stuff, I just stop. Until, for me, it doesn't work unless I'm inspired. And sometimes I'm inspired at 3 o'clock in the morning. I'll get straight out of bed and I'll go start working on something. If I'm working on something for, say, a film or something that requires a deadline, I've amassed enough skills to be able to get it done. But I think that the difference is getting something done that will do the job, and then there's that inspired work that only works when you're inspired.
Hey, you play a lot of instruments. How did it work for you? Like, how do you learn all those instruments? How do you split your time learning those instruments? Like, was it one instrument for a specific period of time, or how did it work? Like,
well, when I was growing up, I was a drummer, so whenever I had band rehearsals, they were at my house. So all of the musicians would bring their instruments to my house, and they would leave them there. So I had a house full of, I had a bass and a bass amp with pedals. I had a guitar with guitar pedals. I had an 8-track recorder and a keyboard and all of this stuff that I never played myself, but that's how I learned how to play it. And I learned also, because I had an 8-track recorder, I started making my own music. Terrible music, but it was my own stuff. So I was learning how to write bass lines, and then how that worked in counterpoint to a keyboard part, and how that worked with a guitar part, and then how that worked with a particular drum part that I was writing. And so these were all, that was the way for me to kind of step into that world of making music on different instruments. And I realized that my fascination with music was never only based on one instrument. When I was growing up, listening to Zeppelin or Rush or Queen, I was always listening to really big music with a lot of stuff going on. And I always wanted to be able to do all of it. It wasn't about being, an expert or a virtuoso at any of those particular things. These were means to be able to create that large sound, to be able to. So that's why I learned how to. And I started playing sarod for a little while, played santur for a little while, and I knew that I wasn't going to play these instruments for the rest of my life. but there was something that I learned. There was something that I was able to, that I still apply in my own music by spending that 2 years playing sarod and those 4 years playing santur, and as a tabla player, as a composer, all of these things come into play. And a lot of people, a lot of musicians, or especially producers that you meet, oftentimes are people who have been able to explore a lot of different styles of music and different instrumentation. It's important to know the physicality of what it is that you are working with. So now when I work with a guitar player, I have a much deeper understanding of what it is that they're doing besides me just asking for something and them delivering it. I know what to ask for. I know what their physical limitations are. I know the limitations of the instrument itself. I'm not going to sit here and do a guitar solo for you, but I know enough about the instrument to be able to work with great guitar players and get more out of that interaction.
For me, I feel like your fusion music was the first that kind of connected with me in a very pure and specific way, and yet it's always evolving, and you're always pushing the boundaries on it. So where do you feel that fusion music is today, and where do you think it's headed?
Well, I mean, fusion music has always been happening, right? That's what music is. I mean, everything, even Indian classical music, is fusion. It's a fusion of many different ideas that come together on one stage, but these ideas come from many different places. So I think that it's always evolving. I mean, fusion is the process. It's not a style. It's not a particular form of music. Fusion is the process that we acknowledge as music is evolving in front of us. And we might have had a moment where this was our time. This was the time where we resonated most with that music. But it's, I think that what's happening today is a generation of artists now who are already fused. They're growing up with U. Srinivas and Zakir Hussain and John Coltrane and the latest heavy metal album and the latest Anderson .Paak record and whatever new hip hop record is coming out, all happening at the same time, and they're expressing that all at the same time. And some of the artists that I work with now in my collective in India are young artists who are, they're blowing my mind with how they're able to come in and be like, oh yeah, it's this and that, right? So it's kind of like a techno, meets bhajan, meets a light classical thing with a little Carnatic twist and a dash of heavy metal. Done. Whereas for us, it took us years to be able to kind of get to that point where we understood. So I think that, if anything, that's I think where we're at now, is that the music that we're going to hear from now on is going to be on a whole nother level.
Hi, Karsh.
Hi.
Huge fan, love your work. I would like to ask you about taste, and if you, from your own experience, have any ideas on creating a rich journey of discovering new music.
Well, that was what I was actually addressing before. I think that there needs to be a little bit more of a platform for new emerging artists who have something new to say, because oftentimes it gets lost in the mix. There's so much stuff out there that it's hard to find the new stuff. And I think that also has to do with it's also a curator's job to bring those things together and present new music in that particular way. And I think there are people out there, people who are doing podcasts and people who are putting together playlists that a lot of people check out because they trust what it is. I remember when I was coming up, back then it was people's radio shows, but there were a few people who were responsible for introducing the world to some of the, like I remember when my second album had come out and Coldplay was still a new band, that was being introduced as a brand new artist, in this compilation that I was a part of. Now they're of course one of the biggest bands on the planet. But it was because there was a platform like that. So I think that's the important thing, is to be able to have and encourage people as well to share playlists and to curate, these kind of things where people have access to new music and new artists.
So one thing I want to know, because you've been in the industry for a while and you've worked with various artists from India or from elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
How do they approach the music? What's the difference in their approach to the music, which is, the Asian underground is still based on Indian classical up to an extent. So how do they approach the music based on their cultural background?
I mean, I can't really say that there's a particular. I mean, every musician is different. You know, I've met artists that are purists coming from the electronic music world that don't really necessarily understand how to step out of that particular box. I've met Indian classical musicians who've been playing for decades who have absolutely no issue with hearing some grimy drum and bass track and know exactly how it is that they fit into that context. So there's no real answer to that. I mean, it really comes down to the individual artists. I mean, there have been classical musicians who I've worked with that I've had to completely mute everything that I was working on and just play a classical tabla part just so that they could understand what the context was that I was trying to bring them into. And usually those are actually younger artists, and the older artists tend to be a little bit more versatile, and because they've been there and done that. I mean, we assume when we hear musicians that this is what they do, so this is the bubble that they live in, but they hear everything. They've seen everything. And the older the artists, I mean, someone like Zakirbai, who's not only seen, but he's lived through, he's breathed through so many different genres of music that his own audiences still have no idea how much this guy has lived through, you know. So when a guy like that comes into the studio, you know, I'm hard pressed to throw him a curveball where he's scratching his head.
So thanks everyone for your questions. So we have a very nice surprise. It's that Karsh, I think, is gonna give us a quick little demonstration of the tabla.
So for those of you who have not seen these drums, this is called the tabla. Traditionally Indian classical instrument, but now used all over the world in all walks of music, whether it be in Hollywood films or hip hop music or pop music or kirtan, all kinds of stuff. And it's also an incredibly versatile instrument in that it's not only a rhythm instrument, it's also a tonal instrument, a melodic instrument, and it's a talking drum as well. You can speak, you can have conversations. So the way that the repertoire that we learn is based on syllables. So these are syllables that we turn into words. Then these words we turn into paragraphs and we create stories. There's a particular rhythm called keherwa, which is probably one of the most popular rhythms all over the planet. And you hear it in devotional music, you hear it in Bhangra, you hear it in Bollywood, you hear it in reggae music, you hear it in all kinds of different music. And it's a very simple rhythm that anyone can learn and then expand upon. So the syllables of keherwa are dhin, na. So it's dhin na, dhin, dhin na, dhin na, dhin, dhin na. So that's the general. Composition of keherwa. But there's many different interpretations of that. So I'll kind of take you through a little bit of that. It was kind of like typing with a typewriter. I had to keep like moving it back, but thank you.
Look at everyone.